All right, and I think we have a pretty short time window today, so we're going to get going here. Excited again for everyone to join us to learn more about Manetu. With me today is Moise, the CEO and co-founder of Manetu. Hi, Moise.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate having you.
Thank you. Happy to be
here.
And
today we're really talking about DLT and blockchain in the real world. This is a topic that is certainly of interest to many people. As we see this thing, and I say this thing as DLT and blockchain, is really kind of started out as a toy, and that was kind of the initial principle for this. Things like CryptoKitties, ERC20 taking off, and we're starting to move past that now, I think, to get to some real world business applications and use cases, and that's really what we're all about. Today is one particular use case that I think is a great fit and solution for not just Hedera, but DLT and blockchain in general, and that is really proving data compliance. I'm Garrett Coons. I'm a part of the product marketing team here at Hedera Hashgraph. And Moise, do you want to give a quick introduction of yourself over here?
Yeah, I am the CEO for Manetu. We are a data privacy platform. Prior to starting Manetu, I was the Global Chief Technology Architect for State Street Bank, and prior to that, I was the Global Chief Innovation Officer for the London Stock Exchange.
Fantastic. And I'm sure we'll learn a ton from you as we progress here in today's conversation. So before we do that, I just want to introduce, the concept of this webinar series again is DLT and blockchain in the real world. If you have any questions, we'll get to that at the end. Feel free to use the Q&A portion of Zoom if you have access to that, and we'll try to answer as many as we can here. This webinar should be about 30 minutes or so in total, so we'll get going. The requirements for mainstream adoption of public DLTs, and so back when Hedera really just started about 2 years ago, we really set out to kind of push this industry forward in terms of performance, security, stability, and governance. We believe that these are kind of the 4 things that really needed to be required in order to usher in mainstream real-world adoption of this technology. And I think we've done a very good job so far, if I can pat my own back on that, both in terms of performance and security, but also in stability and governance. Since launching really only 10 months ago, we've gotten a lot of progress on both sides of these things. For governance, if you're not familiar, Hedera is a decentralized network that's owned and operated by these term limited organizations. These organizations are globally distributed and trying to get the roadmap and the code base, and running the initial set of nodes is a big responsibility. Just in the past few months, we've had UCL, the University College London, Zane, LG, which I think is a really good class of council members being added and starting to contribute to this project. And so they really set the standard in the gold bar for that stability and governance of the network, which is certainly one key aspect that you must consider when choosing some of this public ledger technology to use. The other thing that we've talked about is kind of performance and security. For most of these people, in terms of these real-world applications, what they're leveraging is called the Hedera Consensus Service. So this is a very scalable solution for managing event data, similar to what Moise is going to be talking about today, that takes advantage of that native speed of our Hashgraph consensus algorithm. So this is really under the covers what makes Hedera unique in terms of its ability to have low-cost, scalable transactions with high throughput and finality. Of course, these transactions being sent to Hedera are very secure. For the consensus service, we're making it so that it's cryptographically secure in the sense that we have a running hash that gives you traceability for the entire transaction history, if you like, and verification using cryptography and signatures to know exactly where that provenance is coming from. And lastly, especially as it relates to today's use case, we're talking about auditability. So the ability for other parties to collectively be able to securely see this information, validate the transactions, verify that information, and understand that it is, highly powerful and has a high degree of integrity to verify that information in real time, which is a kind of net new thing and building block in this world, which I'm certainly excited for. So that kind of sets the backdrop for these topics and conversations that we'll be having in the next few months. For us today, we're talking with Manetu. So Moise, why don't you give a little bit of a primer on Manetu, kind of what you guys have built and how you got here.
Yeah, no, thank you. So Manetu is really a data privacy management platform, consumer privacy management platform. And if you think about it, there are many regulations across the planet, GDPR and California Consumer Protection Act being some of the more well-known ones, but Brazil has it, India has it, many countries have started to institute privacy policies that give certain rights to the consumers. And what that means is that enterprises that operate within these jurisdictions actually have to provide compliance according to those regulations. In the past, and while I was in some global roles at very significant institutions, we have had to deal with some of these types of regulations where in order to comply, and when a data subject access request comes in, meaning typically a data subject access request may be where a consumer may come in and request exactly what data an organization holds on them, be able to edit that data, or they have the right to revoke data. When these data subject access requests come into an organization, typically it would kick off a manual process where the consumer would come in, fill out a form, and then the enterprise would have to take that request, hand it to their business units, and go find the information from multiple target systems. So, part of this information may be sitting in a CRM system, part of this information may be sitting in some kind of a database, and some of this information is scattered throughout your storage infrastructure, whether it be cloud-based or other. To gather that information, according to Forrester and other services, it takes on an average 15 hours per data subject access request. What Manetu has done is we've really automated the entire process of data discovery and data mapping, aggregation of that data into a single source of truth where you can actually use that as a data master as well as an identity master. So you have all of that data aggregated into a single place, and then flip the control to the consumer directly with appropriate policies in place, meaning the enterprise can define exactly what policies the consumer has the ability to directly access which components of the data and which components of the attributes, and be able to change that data. So in this self-service model, instead of a data subject access request taking 15 plus hours on average, in our model, these access requests can be handled in real time. So as the number of these requests start to actually multiply, which it's starting to happen because California Consumer Protection Act, under that act, the fines started to go into effect this month. Companies are starting to see an uptick in those data subject access requests. The Manetu platform allows them to do that in a transparent and real-time manner, while ensuring that you can actually create a regulatory vault which allows you as the enterprise as well as your regulators to be able to trace and track exactly what type of activity might have occurred on your system. And what I'm really excited to be doing with Hedera today is we leverage the Hedera ledger, the public ledger, to actually act as a notarization service where the consumer, when they take certain actions around their data, and in certain cases, these could be very critical and sensitive actions, when they take those actions, they can be ensured that that action has been notarized so that they know that that action took place and it has been recorded.
Very powerful. And so just to be clear with the audience here, you know, Manetu has built a very robust platform. There's a portion that's kind of this data discovery, kind of understanding what data is held where, and that is very separate from the Hedera use case. So the Hedera use case is really this auditable log of data requests and enterprise responses. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. And I think in the demo, we'll maybe touch on some of that. So to your point, right, data aggregation may occur from multiple target systems. And then that data control and data management occurs within within the control system. And then that control is given to the data owner in a way where the data owner can actually make modifications and look at the information and have the ability to do consent management with that particular enterprise provider.
Very good. And so, you know, just to play devil's advocate here a little bit, you know, why not use a centralized database or why augment that with something like Hedera Consensus Service in your mind?
Well, look, in order to leverage a public ledger, right, you are actually ensuring that that transaction is not being controlled or notarized by a single identity or entity, which is extremely powerful, right? Basically, with the latest hacks that we've seen, whether it be Twitter or any other you know, news item out there today, it is front and center in the public's eye that security breaches can occur. When we look at a public ledger where the consensus around each transaction is built by not a single entity, but by multiple entities. So in order to really hack that, it's a much more difficult task. It gives the consumer that much more confidence that, first of all, their data is secure, and secondly, their transactions have been validated in the manner that they expect them to be.
Very good. Makes total sense, and I think it's very valuable and almost a standard potentially in the future for this type of relationship. So without further ado, you know, let's get into the good stuff, I think, and have you starting to share a little bit more with a real demo.
Yeah, so let me just share my desktop and I'll walk you guys through a really quick demo of the product. What you're seeing over here is just a typical target system, okay? This particular target system that I'm showing you is a Salesforce system where you may be carrying different types of information on the consumers that might be on your platform. You know, so if we look at any given consumer, you know, you'll notice the type of information that your CRM might be holding on them. You know, their phone numbers, typically their address, you know, potentially their social security numbers. Potentially this could even have account information, you know, their assistant's name, phone number, other things like that. Typically, these target systems, right, a large organization will have not only one or two of these types of target systems, they'll literally have hundreds of these target systems. And in order for you to go and actually update or even gather information from these target systems, it's a very onerous process. What Manetu does is we allow our enterprise clients to come in and log into an administrative portal. This administrative portal allows them, based on the clients, to actually look at exactly what you know, connectors we have made available to them. So in this case, they may have an Excel connector. They may have certain types of connectors which basically look at their storage infrastructure, and we can go in and run machine learning algorithms against that storage infrastructure, whether it be Excel files, whether it be PDF files, and identify with our machine learning algorithms where there might be PII information sitting and hidden. We have other connectors. In this particular scenario, I'm showing you a Microsoft Dynamics connector, which is also a CRM. You may have PII information, personally identifiable information, sitting in your Outlook databases. So if we look at the Outlook database, you may look at and see, the different types of information in your global database you may carry on a particular consumer. In your personal database, you may carry certain types of information on a consumer. We allow the administrator to come in and pick exactly which attributes out of these fields they want to make visible directly to the consumer. Once the administrator does that, the consumer can see exactly what data this particular enterprise holds on them, which is very powerful. Instead of a consumer coming in and asking, an entity, let's just choose Verizon, hey, what data do you hold on me, right? Verizon, under these regulations, has 30 days or 45 days, depending on the jurisdiction, to go and gather that data. Now the consumer has to just sit there. In this scenario, the consumer has that data available to them immediately. In the Salesforce connector, you can see the administrator can come in and pick exactly which fields they believe to be PII information, and they can show that to the consumer directly. We can run our machine learning algorithms against these target systems, Salesforce or Outlook, and we can further identify which attributes we believe to be PII. And again, the control is still in the administrator's hands. The Swagger connector gives you access to almost any open API-based system. So whether you want to do Oracle or MySQL or any other database, we allow for that. And we create custom connectors all the time for our clients. Once you've done this, right, you can onboard data from all of these target systems, and you can bring that data into one place. So if you look at any given consumer account that you as an enterprise hold on a consumer, you can look at exactly what you hold on that particular consumer. So this becomes your unified data repository, if you will. This tells you exactly where that data is coming from and what data you hold on any particular entity. We further map that with a graph database so you can actually see where that data came from, what target systems that data came from, what attributes you hold on a particular consumer. So what this is doing is, if we dive in to that one particular example I was showing you, you can see that this is the aggregated data summary you hold on a particular consumer. You can see, their assistant's name, their, home address, blah, blah, blah. And you can also see which data sources you collected that information from. So what this does is, now let's flip to so this is the enterprise interface. Now let's flip to what a consumer interface may look like. So a consumer may come in and log in to their profile, and they may look to see exactly what information a particular provider, in this case, this is the provider, what information a particular provider holds on them. They can see exactly the information that this provider holds on them, within which databases, what information they hold in which databases, and what that information is, okay? Now, further, the consumer also has the ability to see what policies they have agreed to. So they can see that whether they have consented to a particular policy that that particular provider might have provided, okay? The consumer can also come in and say, hey, you know what? If I'm looking at some of this data, and let's just pick on one field for now, they say, hey, my assistant's name is actually changed, or this is incorrect. It's not Jimmy Cash, it's Johnny Cash, one of my favorite singers. So if it's Johnny Cash, The consumer has the ability to go in and edit that data directly and save it. When they save that, right, this actually gets reflected within the enterprise's database, the Manetu control system, immediately. So if we were to simply refresh that particular page and we go back there, we will notice that that particular field, where did it go? Let's find it for 1 second. Right here. The assistant's name changed from Jimmy Cash to Johnny Cash. Now, not only did this happen right here, where in the control plane this changed, we actually do a change data capture event, both from the target system into the control plane, as well as from the control plane into the target system. Meaning, when this value changed to Johnny Cash, the target system, which in this case was Salesforce, if I refresh that, the target system should also reflect that that change had occurred. And you as the enterprise administrator did not have to do anything for that change to get reflected here. So if your salespeople were calling on this particular consumer or their assistant, they have the most up-to-date information present to them. Now, if we flip back to the consumer interface for 1 second, so the consumer made a change, and I showed you that that change flowed all the way through the control plane into the target systems. The consumer may say, hey, this was something really sensitive, right? It could have been actually a transaction, whether they moved money or they did something, right? And they really care for this transaction. The consumer has the ability to go into the activity log, and they can see there is an activity that has been logged here that says that the assistant's name had changed. And this has actually been notarized with Hedera and on the public ledger, and it's been verified. The consumer can click on this, and this brings you directly to the Hedera interface, the Kabuto, and it shows you the hashed value that got generated because of this assistant's name change. This hash value, by the way, if you were to run an 8UTF code, if you ran SHA-256 on that particular value, you would get this exact hash value, okay? So by doing that, the consumer has confidence that a particular action was notarized on a public ledger, which obviously that particular transaction was validated, and only you were able to get that transaction when consent was achieved by a majority of the nodes and all the fun things that you guys do with DLT. And that gets reflected. So now the consumer knows that that particular transaction had occurred. That transaction is reflected here within the service provider interface. So if I come back to the service provider interface from the consumer interface, service provider has the ability to notice exactly what activities had happened in a certain time frame. They can see, so if the service provider administrator wants to see what transactions had happened on their system, or a regulator was to come to the service provider and ask for certain logs that they want to keep, these are the logs that the service provider can point to and show that this particular consumer came in and modified this particular attribute, assistant name, from this value to this value, and actually it was notarized on a public ledger, right? Additionally, what we also do is we provide the service provider with the ability to look at graphically where certain consumer data comes from. So, if this particular service provider is concerned with, let's say, GDPR, and they care about the European Union, they can see exactly what countries they have data from. They can dive in to that particular country. They can look at the consumer within that country and what data they hold on them from a country perspective. I already showed you the activity log where they can see exactly what activities have occurred on this system over a period of time. So you can see over the period of 1 day, over a period of 30 minutes, or anything else. the service provider also has the ability to actually define new policies. So the service provider has a particular policy, fair use consent. Service provider may be a service provider that allows for, let's just say, COVID-19 testing, and they want to share the test results with a particular lab. They can add a new policy for sharing test results with Quest. They can define exactly the effective dates of this. So it is effective from today's date to the end of the month, whatever those dates may be. They can further define whether this particular policy goes into effect by default for any and all consumers. It can be done by region, or it can be done across the board. They can define description. They can create legal language around this. They can upload documents that provide legal language, and they can save these policies. When they save the policy, this policy becomes visible to the consumer immediately, and the consumer has the ability to consent or not consent. So not only does the platform actually allow for attribute management and artifact management, the platform also allows for full consent management, along with having the ability to create a single source of truth around your data, as well as the identities that you manage across disparate systems in a typical enterprise. So that's kind of the short of it.
And that's impressive alone, boys. I'm blown away by this demo. I love the traceability of it and the verifiability of it on Hedera in particular. It seems like you're almost, maybe perhaps, and this is the projecting here, starting off with Hedera being kind of this audit log for regulators, but it could end up morphing into this source of truth between all of these systems. I imagine as, you know, partner relationships develop and the data sprawl even continues further, onboarding those other partners to something like Manetu makes a ton of sense and seems to be one of the only scalable solutions that I can aware of on the market.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. This partnership has been fantastic, and we're already seeing a lot of demand from our clients that are asking for this type of verification where, you know, while Manetu does all types of things from a security aspect, where, you know, we create multi-factor authentication. We even do post-quantum key distribution and post-quantum cryptography and other core capabilities that we have the ability to do for certain clients that demand very, very secure networks and environments. But what Hedera really brings to us is, along with doing all of that security work, right, it allows us to actually have a public notary service and validation and verification service. That's something that a single entity cannot do. So I think that the Hedera network provides for something that is very, very powerful.
Absolutely, well said. And so let's jump to a few of the questions from the audience here, as we're just about at time. You know, one of the questions is for Manetu. How long does it typically take an enterprise to get set up and integrated with the platform?
So depending on the target systems that we are, you know, consolidating information from, if we already have the connectors built, like I showed you, you know, such as the Salesforce connectors and the Dynamics and other connectors, it literally takes us an afternoon, if that long, to onboard a client. And if we need to build a custom connector for, you know, a custom environment, which we do for our clients, it typically, because we've created a connector framework, which is very powerful, at the most, we've seen that take us, you know, a couple of weeks or something along those lines. So it's not overly onerous. But if the connectors are available, it's literally the onboarding process is clicking 3 or 4 buttons and waiting for the data to get ingested.
Very cool. That's fantastic to hear, and hopefully some more people, including Hedera, potentially could start to use this. How do you see Very good. How do you see the platform adapting with regulatory changes in the future?
So the way we've built the platform, and hopefully you can appreciate that, it's not built for a particular regulatory regime. The platform is built really from a data privacy, data management, and data security point of view. So it is completely applicable, and we actually have clients in multiple jurisdictions that are coming to our platform and looking to leverage it across the board. So we're in talks with clients from Japan and India and other places like that. So it's not just the European Union or the US for that matter.
Absolutely. I believe I saw a figure of 30 or so countries have some type of data privacy or compliance regulations, and that has to continue to grow and evolve. So it'll be interesting to see that future.
Yeah.
And then the other question is more Hedera related, and I don't know if you have an answer for this, but beyond what you presented today, is there anything else that you plan on using Hedera for in the future?
I think the relationship with Hedera is a very critical relationship from our perspective, and we do believe that there are multiple intersect points. So, one of them being the fact that Hedera itself might leverage the platform to store sensitive information. Other leverage points are what type of additional integration we may do with a public ledger to actually bring value both to the ledger as well as to the Manetu platform. And we're definitely in talks with you guys on all kinds of partnership opportunities there. So stay tuned, and hopefully over the course of the next month or two, you'll start to see more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the attendees from today's webinar are actually going to be able to get their own Manetu dashboard of sorts and be able to see exactly the data that we have on them. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so if you give us a day or so, we plan to actually onboard all of the registered attendees onto the Manetu platform. And once we've done that, people can come to the Manetu website, www.manetu.com, and under the privacy page, you can actually register directly, and then you'll be able to see and control your own data, whether it be simply looking to see what information we have on you, or your ability to edit and revoke certain parts of that information, or all of that. So yes, that is very
cool. That's a pretty neat paradigm shift, I think. And bringing that transparency, I think, is something Hedera is very much all about, and we're glad to have Manetu with us as well. Anything you want to add here before we jump off?
Just thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate everyone's time here. Please, if we can help with answer any questions, we're available.
Beautiful. Well, I'm sure the community appreciates that. I think this is a wonderful first example for us in terms of real-world adoption of this technology for Hedera, but blockchain in general and at large. I think our next group of this webinar series is actually going to be with AdStacks, and so hopefully everyone comes back and joins us in August for that. There's so much in this world and in this space that we're excited for. Manetu is one of the great projects that I think is helping us push, the future forward. So thank you very much for that. This webinar was recorded, and so we'll be sure to share it with everyone as well, alongside some other potential assets. If you want to look to integrate something like this for your own application, we have a proof of action microservice to check out that makes this very easy to do very quickly, which is very nice. So with that, we'll wrap up here. Thank you so much, Moise, and thank you for everyone to join us today. We very much appreciate this, and have a good rest of your days.
Thank you very much.
Take care.